Do you remember IROC? Well, if you're a racing fan under 20 years old, you might not. The Motorsports All-Star Series has been gone for almost a decade and a half at the time of recording, and unfortunately, I don't think any of us realized truly how special it was until it was gone. The International Race of Champions was a racing series that began in 1974. The goal of the series was to put together a small group of top stars from the biggest racing leagues around the United States against each other in a series of sprint races each year. The inaugural season in 1974 saw such names as Mark Donohue, Richard Petty, and A.J. Foyt all competing for the series championship. As the years went by, more iconic names would compete in the IROC Series. The likes of Al Unser, Mario Andretti, and Dale Earnhardt all competed and won in the series. The schedule was always short, with every season consisting of 4 races, with the exception of 1985 and 1990. In order to keep a level playing field, IROC ran spec cars, so every driver had the exact same equipment. The first season was contested using Porsche Carreras. Chevy Camaros would be used from 1975 to 1989. Dodges were used from 1990 to 1995, first with Dodge Daytonas and then with Avengers. 1996 saw the introduction of the Pontiac Trans Am, which would be in use until IROC's final race, which brings us to the topic of today's video. The Crown Royal IROC Series rolled into the Atlanta Motor Speedway on October 28, 2006 for the final race of the 30th IROC season. The 2006 field was comprised of Tony Stewart, Matt Kenseth, Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Newman, Mark Martin, and Ted Musgrave from the world of NASCAR, Sam Hornish Jr. and Scott Sharp from the Indy Racing League, Frank Kimmel from ARCA, Steve Kinser from the World of Outlaws, and Max Papis, Wayne Taylor, and Max Angelelli from Grand Am, though Taylor and Angelelli only competed in 2 races apiece. The previous 3 races of the season were action-packed. It all started at Daytona in February, where 5-time IROC champion Mark Martin would go out early with a crash on the front stretch. Later in the night, Steve Kinser would go for an even wilder ride down the backstretch, flipping several times. 2004 IROC champion Matt Kenseth would start the season off in victory lane. Texas was up next on the schedule, and unfortunately for Kinser, flipping at Daytona just wasn't enough apparently, as he went for another wild ride down the backstretch at Texas on lap 59. Tony Stewart would go on to grab the win. At Daytona in July, the series took to the road course, and despite starting in the back, Stewart once again found himself in victory lane. Stewart entered the Atlanta race as the points leader and was seeking his 11th championship in his 27-year racing career. Kenseth trailed by just 15 points and was in search of his second IROC crown in 3 years. Papis and Newman were still mathematically eligible for the title as they sat tied for third, 24 points back, but they would need misfortune to strike Stewart and Kenseth to give them a chance. Starting lineups were set by point inverts, so Musgrave and Kinser were on the front row, Taylor and Sharp in row 2, Martin and Kimmel in row 3, Hornish and Truex in row 4, followed by the 4 championship hopefuls rounding out the field. Green flag flew, and the 65-lap, 100-mile sprint race was on. Musgrave jumped out to the early lead as Kinser dropped back, and Stewart and Kenseth began making their way forward. Musgrave led lap 1, but Sharp immediately zoomed past him as they headed into turn 1, with Kimmel providing a push. IROC cars had engines with a base horsepower of 500, so at a track like Atlanta you could run wide open and use the draft to make moves. Stewart was quickly flying through the field, and Kenseth was trying to keep pace as he took Newman and Truex 3 wide. That 3 wide ended up lasting an entire 2 laps before Truex finally faded on the top. Up front, Martin started to put heat on Sharp for the race lead as speed went to its first commercial break. When coverage resumed on lap 10, Martin had the top spot. Kenseth was ahead of Stewart now, but he wasn't doing enough to seriously cut into his points lead. Pole sitter Musgrave continued to fall as Newman slipped by him in turn number 3. Newman kept the momentum up as he and Kenseth got past Kimmel a lap later. Wind speeds were around 30 miles per hour that day, and despite the low horsepower allowing drivers to run wide open, the crosswinds did contribute to some handling issues in the corners. On lap 17, Kenseth in car 17 got the runoff 2 to get side by side with Sharp for second. Here's something that may sound familiar to you. IROC races featured a competition caution which would allow every driver to pit for tires. Additionally, points were awarded to the top 3 at the time of caution, with the leader getting 3 points, second getting 2 points, and third getting 1 point, literally a precursor to the stages that we have in NASCAR today. That day in Atlanta, the caution was scheduled for lap 40, and if things stayed the way they were with Kenseth in second and Stewart in 8th, this would provide the 17 a chance to gain some ground. Bonus points also went to the top 3 lap leaders in each event, with the driver with the most circuits out front receiving 5 points, the second most 3 points, and the third most 2 points. Kenseth eventually completed the pass for second, but Newman remained right on his bumper. Newman would get to his outside, and the two would get to battling for position. Newman had drafting help, while Kenseth was all alone. Newman and Truex would get by as speed went to its second commercial break. Martin had opened up a 3-second lead by lap 22. Considering this was a Spec Car Series, that's really impressive. With Stewart in 6th, Kenseth was still 12 points back, and with Martin out front dominating, he was now tied with Newman for 3rd. Stewart was riding by himself, but as long as he kept Kenseth in his sights, he was going to be okay. Kenseth took Truex and Newman 3 wide through 1 and 2 to get second back. Stewart responded by picking up a few positions himself, and while doing so, Newman went back by Kenseth. Under commercial, Martin's lead increased to over 5 seconds, and Stewart got by Kenseth for 4th. With that, his points lead was up to 17, and he was standing between Kenseth and any possible bonus points he could earn at lap 40. Things would get tougher for Matt as Kimmel tried passing Stewart high, and the two made contact, sending the 46 sideways to bring out the race's first caution. Kenseth gave him a great push down the front stretch, but as he closed on Stewart, he slapped the wall and came across Kenseth's nose. Papis and Taylor pitted under the yellow. Max thought he had a flat tire, but he didn't, and Taylor was having engine issues. No cars were allowed to take tires until the competition caution. Martin brought the field to the restart with 6 laps until the break. Truex, who had won the previous year's Atlanta race, challenged for the lead but was unable to complete the pass. Papis gave Sharp an incredible push down the front stretch, and he sailed by both championship contenders going into turn 1. Despite his spin, Kimmel was back up to 3rd by lap 38. Kimmel was allowed to change tires after his spin, but in the spirit of fairness, he had to put on scuffs. Martin led at the competition caution, followed by Kimmel and Newman, so neither Tony nor Matt received any bonus points. Under caution, each car received 4 fresh tires. This only being a 100-mile race, fuel wasn't necessary. Kenseth's car was being assessed for damage from his contact with Kimmel. The right front fender was beat up pretty good, and the IROC pit crew actually replaced the entire thing prior to the restart. Here's a comparison of the after and before. Kenseth still retained his spot in 7th for the restart. Green back out with 25 to go, and Martin jumped out to the lead again. Stewart had to lift off of 2 to avoid getting pinched into the wall, and he quickly sank to the back. Martin moved up to 2nd in points at this time, but he came into the race so far back, he mathematically couldn't win the championship. Papis went for a slide through the grass to bring out the caution once again. He clipped the nose of Sharp's car exiting 4, and amazingly, Papis kept it straight as he slid through the grass. He did have some front end damage, though. This was also a close call for Stewart as he nearly ran into the back of Sharp after he had spun Papis. Caution laps didn't count, so 24 laps to go at the green. Finally, somebody got the best of Mark Martin as Truex took the lead thanks to a generous shove by Newman. He would overtake Truex quickly after, though, and now Newman was in position to possibly win the race and the championship. But Stewart began moving through the field once again as Martin desperately tried to get back up front. A few laps later, he got to the 12's outside, and it nearly went south fast as they continuously made contact coming through the tri-oval. This allowed Kenseth to make it 3 wide out of 2, but not to be outdone, Truex made it 4 wide down the back straightaway before Martin backed out as they entered turn 3. Kenseth briefly took the lead before Newman and Truex charged back by. I feel this would be a good time to mention that IROC drivers had no spotters, and all these daring moves came from what they saw in the mirrors and their own natural instinct. Truex would take the lead formally this time as they crossed the stripe with just 17 to go. Speed would take another commercial break, and when they returned with 13 laps left, Newman was leading once again. Under commercial, Martin was in 3rd and kissed the wall off of turn 2, which nearly caused Stewart to rear end him. Once again, smoke escaped near disaster. Speed's final commercial break came with just 10 laps left. Guess they had to hit their quota, and we returned to the top 5 under a blanket with just 7 laps to go. Truex went to the point on the backstretch, but Newman got the lead back in turn number 1. Deja vu occurred as they repeated the exact same process the next lap as well. 4 to go now, and Newman ever so slightly had to get out of the throttle in turn 2, which allowed Truex by up top. It would be another 2 laps before Newman could draw a bead on him again and go past him on the backstretch. But Truex was so good up top, he got the run off of 4, and it was a dead heat as they took the white flag. Newman had the edge through 1 and 2, but Truex crossed him over and got an incredible shove from Kenseth going into 3, which allowed him to pull away as they headed to the checkers, where he claimed his 2nd straight Atlanta IROC win. Funny enough, despite his knack for mile-and-a-half tracks in recent years, these still stand as Truex's only wins at Atlanta at the time of of this recording. With a third-place finish, Tony Stewart claimed the 2006 Crown Royal IROC Series championship to add to his already impressive motorsports resume. Unbeknownst to anybody at the time, though, his season 30 title would also mark the end of the series itself. Crown Royal did not renew its sponsorship in the 2006 offseason, and the series went on hiatus in 2007. When no sponsors could be found for 2008, IROC auctioned off all of their assets and officially closed the door on one of motorsport's most unique series. It's been nearly 14 years since that sunny October day in Atlanta, and I'm sure many people like myself would welcome IROC back with open arms today. Just think about it, the likes of Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch battling with names like Joseph Newgarden, Scott Dixon, Brad Sweet, Donnie Schatz, and many, many more. As great as all that sounds, it's merely a pipe dream at this point. But you never know what the future may hold. And that'll do it for another episode of Remember This Race. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Tyler Head. You can follow me on Twitter at TylerHead18. Please also check out my NASCAR podcast, Up to Speed, which you can listen to on Apple Podcasts, as well as watch episodes right here on this YouTube channel. Lastly, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have a race that you think deserves to be remembered, let me know in the comments, and it may show up in a future video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.